thank you for coming here. This will probably be the last press conference before the President's press conference, and the Secretary General's in a short while, so we'll get started right away. We have with us today Sri Lanka's High Commissioner in London, Dr. Chris Nonis, who has been gracious enough to come up here for a press conference and to take some of your questions. So without taking too much of your time, I will invite Dr. Nonis to make some opening remarks, and then we'll open the floor for a few questions.
Thank you very much, Anuradha. Well, welcome to this press conference. I think I'd just like to say a couple of words, really, from a Sri Lankan perspective, having represented Sri Lanka as the High Commissioner to the UK. I think there has, of course, been a fair amount of sort of negative publicity on several different occasions in the last few years in the run-up to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. But finally, here we are at the end of CHOGM, and I'm very pleased to see so many people here. We were extremely privileged and to have hosted the conference, particularly being one of the 8 founder member nations of what's termed the modern Commonwealth. If you go back to the London Declaration of '49, we've always cherished the principles of democracy and development, the twin pillars of the Commonwealth, as well as the principles enshrined in the various declarations. And I think we've had an extremely successful Commonwealth Youth Forum, Business Forum, and People's Forum, and Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. But what is particularly important, in addition to the country delegations that have come to attend CHOGM 2013, is the fact that this has been attended so well by the world's press, in addition to the Commonwealth press alone. And I think this is an opportunity for us to enable us to show you the reality of contemporary Sri Lanka, and as we take on the chair of the Commonwealth, to be able to really forge a very strong identity for the Commonwealth. So now I just open the floor for any questions that you might have.
May I just request you tell us your name and the organization that you're from?
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, sir, Your Excellency. I'm Suha Odrin Kasim from Maison de la Presse from West Africa and Guinea. David Cameron's statement last morning, was just not cricket. You don't come to a host country and insult or threaten the host country and its president with ultimatums. His exact words were that he would take us to the UN Security Council using his mandate to do so if the report wasn't delivered by March. Your comments on that, please?
Yes. Thank you very much for that. I think, firstly, I think the CHOGM is actually a forum for all Commonwealth countries. It is not a forum for bilateral dialogue. The bilateral dialogue can happen in the parallel sessions, but certainly I think the most important thing about a CHOGM is that it should be really for dialogue between all Commonwealth countries. We also fully understand, of course, that at the political level, that there are some countries which have a substantial, wealthy, powerful, and extremely large diaspora. And that can sometimes control the fairly negative and anachronistic narrative towards countries like Sri Lanka. If you do take some of those countries, some of them, Britain is one of them. So we fully understand that each person has their domestic political constituencies and their own considerations, their own electoral compulsions, and some comments that are made, of course, are made in that context. We fully understand that. After all, they're all politicians. So, next question.
Any other questions for Dr. Nonis?
If I could just add to that, I think the important thing, in addition, which you were alluding to, was to the internationalization, because I think the comment had been made about taking bilateral issues internationally. And as I've consistently said, we have a strong and vibrant democracy, and we've had a rich heritage for 2,500 years. 28 years of conflict is not going to prevent us from living together again. But most importantly, with 2,500 year heritage, we also have perfectly educated people in Sri Lanka, and we are perfectly capable of sorting out our own domestic affairs. And we have a very comprehensive Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission here in the country. It had over 5,000 hearings. It was comprehensive, it was impartial, it was holistic, it was even critical. And it was not only released, but released in full. Many people thought that the LLRC would not be released. Many people criticized the manner in which it was implemented. But they were absolutely surprised when in December it was released in full. And not only that, subsequently, His Excellency the President went further and appointed Lalit Veeratunga to oversee the monitoring of the implementation. And I think that is an index of the sincerity that we have within Sri Lanka of the reconciliation process in the country. Secondly, it's very important to understand that reconciliation that works is one that is based on restorative justice, not punitive justice. There are groups of people who look at punitive justice or want punitive justice. But if you look over the last few decades at many conflict-affected countries and post-conflict situations, you will realize that what really helps to heal the wounds of conflict is the concept of restorative justice, where people talk to each other. We talk to each other about what has happened and gradually begin to develop an understanding of each other. And that helps towards the healing process. So what is very important is to realize is that we are actually embarked on that. But restorative justice is part of the LLRC, but that takes time. And for that time, what we look forward to from the international community is that depth and breadth of understanding, to have that graciousness of heart, to have that generosity of spirit, to understand that we've had a bitter conflict with terrorists for 28 years, that we are embarked on a comprehensive reconciliation process, and that that will take time to complete. And in comparison, if you look at South Africa, post-apartheid, if you look at even Northern Ireland, you will see that these two have a substantial way to go. And in comparison, within 4 years, I think we've done exceedingly well. Yes.
South Africa or Northern Ireland were not hauled into the UN Security Council, despite their atrocities. What would the High Commission in London do about David Cameron's statements and his intention to punish Sri Lanka?
No, I mean, I would say the same that I said. Well, essentially, we understand why certain statements are made by particular countries, by particular leaders, whether they want to boycott the summit or whether they want to make very strong statements, because we understand that the driver is very much a very strong diaspora. And there, I hasten to add, I do not demonize the diaspora. You know, many people demonize it. But I think the majority of the diaspora are perfectly educated, perfectly decent people who mind their own business. It is only a small percentage of the diaspora within these countries who have made terrorism a business, and they funded it. And now that the conflict has ended, what they're doing is turning a percentage of that funds towards lobby groups, towards opinion leaders, towards think tanks, and in some countries, towards legislators and parliamentarians. That is what we realize. And it is that that influences. Even if you look at the great, sort of the substantial negative publicity, you know, even in the UK, some people quote some parliamentarians. If you really think about it, there are over 650 parliamentarians. But the constant negativity only comes from maybe less than 20 of them out of 650. And that has consistently happened. We need to understand this. You must not allow us to be subsumed by this whole thing, as if the entire Britain is consumed by this. Not at all. If you think about it, Britain is our second highest source of tourists to the country. Of the million tourists we had last year, 114,600 were from the UK. They come, they love our country. They're coming in increasing amounts. The majority of the British people have a very strong affinity, a very strong reservoir of goodwill with our country, and they love the country. British Airways, after 15 years, they stopped flying after the terrorist bombings 15 years ago, has started flying again. HSBC are here, many British companies are here, Marks & Spencer has so many supplier factories here. The London Stock Exchange, a couple of years ago, bought Millennium IT. Today, the London Stock Exchange is probably the second largest financial center in the world. And I'm proud to say as a Sri Lankan that every transaction in the London Stock Exchange today is run on Sri Lankan software. What a wonderful thing that is. And we have a tremendous educational relationship between the two countries. So I don't think we should get too fazed by comments that are made, particularly if we understand that comments are made partly to pacify domestic electoral compulsions. You have to always look at when a leader makes a statement, just look at this. Just ask yourself the question, when is his next election? And then you have your answer. So I think irrespective of what someone says about it, that does not in any way justify, okay, thank you.
Let's go to Shamir. He had a question first, and then we'll come to you, right?
It work? Yeah, okay. A very good afternoon, Dr. Nonis. First of all, my question to you is, you've been holding office as the High Commissioner of Britain for a period of 2 years. And during these 2 periods in question, there has been many reports, many documentaries released by Channel 4. And the government has stressed that these footage are fabricated and have reiterated that these footage have no basis at all. As the High Commissioner of London, what steps have you taken? Have you taken any steps to challenge this in a court of law in Britain? Because there are measures that could be taken in Britain to challenge these footage and the organization itself. Have you, as the High Commissioner, taken any steps regarding this?
Successive High Commissioners, including myself, including the government of Sri Lanka, has looked at it from a legal perspective. But you know, many people, in a democracy, many people will have divergent opinions. Many people will have negative as well as positive publicity. Channel 4 is an extremely marginal TV company. In Britain, the significant percentage of British people, and I lived there for 28 years, do not in any way even bother to look at Channel 4. That's probably why it's called Channel 4 and not Channel 1, 2, and 3. And I really don't understand why so many of you in Sri Lanka get so worked up about it. If you ask the average person, whenever Channel 4 has shown a documentary on Sri Lanka, you know, people here get sort of quite irate about it, and justifiably so. But the point is, we all realize, as well as the majority of people there, this is not a documentary. If you look at it, it's more like Star Wars in terms of fiction. It's very emotive. It's very emotionally disturbing. But it is not responsible journalism. And when you start off, you realize that. You realize, for example, the main actor, Vani Kumar, you know, portrayed as an innocent graduate, was actually, you know, had very strong LTT and ELAM activist links. So your answer starts from there. From there, you realize if the outcome is prejudged, then there is little purpose in itself. Many people have looked at it. We've seen that a lot of the metadata has been erased. We've seen that a lot of the sequences have been reversed. A lot of the footage, even the original footage showing purported soldiers but wearing slippers, for example, has been erased from the footage. And there are many aspects to it which have been challenged. But the point is, it is very much a peripheral documentary. If you look at the second documentary of it, it is something like 80 to 90% a repeat of the first. If you look at the third documentary, that's again 80 to 90% a repeat of the second. So I wouldn't call it a documentary. It is unauthenticated, uncorroborated, and not a second of it has been actually filmed originally from a Channel 4 journalist or an ITN journalist. So it ends there. I mean, to me, people are perfectly entitled to make whatever they want. It does not justify it, because I think the tragedy is not that. The tragedy is when whatever is used for fame or pecuniary gain then ends up retarding the reconciliation process and retarding the healing of the wounds of conflict. That is patently wicked. So I think that if people are getting money by selling their viewing rights, whether to books or whether to movies, they are perfectly entitled to do it, provided it does not hurt the innocent people, the innocent children, and our children's children, where we are seeking to reconcile Tamil, Muslim, Sinhalese, Burgher, Malay. When we are doing that after a 28-year bitter conflict, it is very wrong of people to make money off effectively the blood money of terrorism. And I think that is very sad. But certainly in terms of steps, yes, it has been looked at time and time again. But we believe that when people, a far more powerful point is that when people visit the country, you see, we've had a very negative, we've had a very anachronistic narrative for many, many years, accepted. But little by little, that is changing. I find that in my tenure of just two and a half years, we have engaged, when you ask, we've engaged with the diaspora, we've invited the diaspora to come to the High Commission, we have touched a certain percentage of them, we've engaged with Commonwealth, with parliamentarians, and with the press. And I find that the most powerful tool is not to get terribly worked up about an extremely peripheral, bohemian TV station of a few people trying to get famous. It really doesn't bother me. What is far more important is that we work with you within the media, encourage you to come to Sri Lanka and see for yourselves. And that is the beauty of what CHOGM has offered this time. I think it's very wonderful that so much of the press are here, because it is you, if you carry out responsible journalism, which Channel 4 does not, it is you who carry out responsible journalism. And when you carry out responsible journalism, you will always not be judgmental, you will not be prejudiced, but you will be fair. Sri Lanka does not want embellishment from anyone. What it wants is those basic principles, those universal principles of just justice, fairness, and equity. And that is why you all play a great part. And that is why we are so pleased that CHOGM is happening today, because it gives the opportunity for the press to be here. Thank you.
Let's go here, and then we'll come to you, Shan.
I am Rajasingam, editor Asia.
Yes. Yes.
Editor Asia Tribune.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
okay, yeah.
If you hold it, yeah.
Yes. Are you able to hear?
Now I can hear. Yes.
Yes. Okay. I think I must say bravo to you for avoiding answering what this other gentleman asked you. He asked you whether you have filed a case or whether you have taken action, taken a legal action against the Channel 4. But you have avoided answering that. Instead, you made a lecture about journalism. Thank you very much for your lecture.
No. I think I answered that at the beginning, because what I said is that we, including the government, has looked at the legal aspects of it. And we have decided that that would not be the path to go. Because people are, particularly in places like the UK, entitled to actually make sort of what they call documentaries or whatever like that. And that is not the path to go in terms of a legal challenge. The path to go is to encourage these people to come to our country. So I very specifically answered that at the very beginning of my question by saying, yes, we have looked at it, not just myself, but successive High Commissioners have looked at it, and the government of Sri Lanka has looked at it. But we do not feel that that is the path, and that is the advice we have.
But anyway,
yes.
I don't agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
You should have taken legal action. This is what I feel. You know, in Sweden, I am from Sweden, there are legal action taken against me for writing about the tigers. And still I am undergoing this again here. Facing the court action filed against me by some of the 4-mile TTS. So I think the best course of action is to pin them in a court of law so that they will stop at least till the cases are over, stop writing further and filming further about Sri Lanka. You know that we tried to confront them. Other day, when Madam was also chairing a briefing where Channel 4 people were here, they had the guts to ask why President didn't attend the press conference. Is he afraid of meeting us? So I was there, and the Daily News editor was Rajpal Abednagar was there, and our monitoring MP for mass media was there. We tried to confront them and made them to understand and made them to subdue. And just today's press conference, they were able to understand things that they know that Sri Lankans are here.
Mr. Rajasingam, if I could interrupt you, do you have a question? Because we're running out of time because of the President's press conference.
Yes, I have. I want to ask only from Dr. Nonis, what type of engagement you have made with the diasporas in London.
Yes.
That's all.
Yes. As I've said, we have had substantial engagement with the diaspora in London. We have regular briefings. We started something after I took up my tenure called a diaspora dialogue, where we have said we invite people of all ethnicities to come. We recognize that they all have their own constituencies. We are not there to preach to them or sermonize to them. That is not our place. But what we have asked them to do is engage in constructive dialogue. And that has worked to a substantial extent with the percentage of the diaspora. But you cannot change certain people who are very intransigent, particularly people who have made terrorism funding a business. So I don't think that is the answer. That is part of the answer. And in terms of, I must take you on your previous worry. Yes, but you live in a different country. You see, the difference is this, that there are media laws, there are particular laws pertaining to Britain, and we have to work within the confines of those laws. It is in that context that a legal option has not been pursued. And that is not up to me. I'm not a lawyer. That is up to the legal experts. And they are those who have taken the view in the context of the domestic laws of that country. So I can assure you, I mean, we can have a long discussion with you afterwards, but that is the view that has been taken depending on the laws of that country. So anyway, just to answer that question, and a substantial amount has been done with the diaspora. But you have to remember, there is a substantial amount of funding going on. And time, I think, is another thing that will heal. The other is when people come to the country, and that is the very purpose of having CHOGM 2013. And we have worked extremely hard for the last 2 years, might I add. I chaired the Board of Governors of the Commonwealth Secretariat. Just to let you know, the 53 or 54 London-based High Commissioners are called the Board of Governors, and they sit on the Commonwealth Secretariat, and I chaired that for the first year. And for the last year, I was the Deputy Chair of the Executive Committee. We have worked relentlessly, ceaselessly, with the Commonwealth High Commissioners to ensure, particularly, that they're appraised of this, particularly prior to the Perth Conference, when it was reaffirmed that we would be hosting CHOGM. We worked tirelessly, even prior to all those issues regarding the Commonwealth Ministerial Action Group. These things don't come to us on a plate. They come by enormous intensive lobbying behind the scenes, and also to appraise people of the reality of contemporary Sri Lanka. So a lot of work has been done regarding that, and I think we're seeing the fruits of that, I'm happy to say, by CHOGM 2013 happening in Sri Lanka.
All right, we'll go to Shehan in the back.
Well, Your Excellency, I think in terms of the authenticity, there are so many questions with regard to the Channel 4. Everybody knows about it. But however, the issue is here, Your Excellency, in terms of taking litigation. Well, even though you say it's a fiction and also Star Wars, yes, we also know, but the British Prime Minister himself has taken that footage as a footnote to accuse Sri Lanka. Now that is a danger point he is making. He himself takes this as authentic. Yesterday at his press conference, he very categorically said. So does it mean then the Sri Lanka should alarm and take legal action on this? Because if the British Prime Minister himself take this serious, then why not Sri Lanka take this serious and go ahead with the litigation?
No, the point is this. I think you're missing the point. The question is whether litigation within the laws of that country is the best option to take, and whether it will work according to the media laws of that country. That is an entirely separate issue from the issue as to whether anyone, whether it is the British Prime Minister or any opinion leader, quotes the Channel 4 footage. You have to understand there are two entirely different issues. The decision regarding litigation, the decision regarding the need for the imperative for something to be done is entirely different from the decision as to whether litigation will succeed within the confines of the laws of that country. And that decision has been taken time and time again by legal experts. That is an entirely different thing as to whether many people quote footage, many people are sometimes misguided, some people are misinformed, but many people quote things. People quote the Darusman report as a UN report. It was not a formally authenticated UN report. It was never requested formally by the UN. It was a private report. Many people quote that. Many people don't quote that section within the Darusman report itself that says that those things within it are written in the form of a narrative and require a higher threshold to be considered evidence. That's the most damning sentence in that entire Darusman report. But who quotes it? because the majority of people don't read the report. They just read the sound bites and use the sound bites. That is why it is important that we continue engagement with the press and by the press. And incidentally, there's nothing to stop all of you, if Channel 4 is so aggressive here, it is a peripheral marginal TV station. There's nothing to stop you all doing the same with those countries to question why things are said. And I think that if you all in the media have an enormous role to play in challenging some of these extremely dubious viewpoints. But that is an entirely different issue, and I don't think this is the forum to get involved in the legality of Channel 4. I think we should go on to just questions that can be answered. I've already said the view regarding Channel 4 was taken already, and it will continue to be taken. But that's a different issue from whether we should place enormous importance on Channel 4 or not. The viewership, let me tell you, not on this last showing of their latest one, but last year, we got some statistics. That Channel 4 video on Sri Lanka, which was sort of emblazoned as, and yet another damning report, and that all of the British were affected by it. Do you know, on that showing, that day at 11 o'clock at night, the readership for the Channel 4 movie was a few thousand people, something like 30,000, 40,000 people. On that same day, the viewership for the cookery program was a few 100,000 people, and a viewership for a football match was 850,000 people. That will give you an index of how irrelevant Channel 4 is. So it is your duty to understand the context, and what we need to do is to move on with contemporary Sri Lanka and the beauty of Sri Lanka now. We don't need to be defensive about people who give us unauthenticated stuff in the first place. What we can do is publicize more the hard fact about the progress we have made in the country and what we intend to do, and I think that is what is important. His Excellency the President will chair the Commonwealth for the next 2 years. The theme, growth with equity, inclusive development, is a very powerful theme that was chosen because it demonstrates what our commitment is to Commonwealth values. We believe in the principles enshrined in the Singapore Declaration of 1971, in the Harare Declaration of 1991. When the President achieved peace in the country in 2009, we asserted the greatest human right, which was the right to life. Because after asserting that human right, for 4 years there's not been a single terrorist attack. Secondly, by the President achieving peace in the country in May 2009, we subscribed to the first fundamental principle enshrined in the Singapore Declaration of 1971 and the Harare Declaration of 1991, which is a commitment to international peace and security. That is important. We also subscribe, and I believe, in the Munyono Statement for Respect and Understanding, which was released after the Uganda CHOGM. Because there, the Nobel laureate Amartya Sen wrote about the importance of respecting the diversity of each and every one of us. And that is the message we move forward with as head of the Commonwealth. What we understand is two things. Number one, we understand when we head the Commonwealth that all Commonwealth countries are at different stages of development. We need to have an empathy and understanding of that, and we need to move forward to unite the Commonwealth countries, not to divide. That is the most important point. The second point, we understand that all countries are different and all people are different, because it is when we respect each other's diversity that we give each other dignity. And it is when we give each other dignity that we will ensure a durable world peace. And it is that message of unity and development and the attending to the imperatives of development in the majority of Commonwealth countries. It is with that message that we will move forward as chair of the Commonwealth. And that is what is important for us to focus on.
We just have time for one more question because I think a lot of you have to also go. Hand up there.
I'm Rangaya Surya from Ceylon today. Thank you for this opportunity. Actually, you have been very generous, I would say, about on your remarks about Britain and our contemporary and historical legacy between our two countries. And also, I would say you have been very rational in your approach towards how to tackle the diaspora, but that is not what we exactly hear in this country, at least from most articulate members of the government, among government interlocutors. And for instance, recently heard Cabinet spokesman Minister Keheli Rabukan saying that Cameron should not basically deal with the matters of Sri Lankan interest, and that he should not come here to discuss war crime basically. And yesterday, so what I'm asking is, there a difference between your approach and the approach of the standard approach of the government of Sri Lanka?
Well, I can't answer for other individual comments that are made, but I would agree with the fundamental principle that Sri Lanka, having been 4 years post-conflict, this is a domestic situation, and there's no requirement whatsoever to internationalize a domestic process. I agree with that comment completely. I also agree that it is misplaced, as I said before, to have bilateral dialogue within a Commonwealth Heads of Government forum other than as a side session for bilateral purposes. Secondly, I agree that I agree with the point that this is not a place, Sri Lanka is not at that position where we need to in any way internationalize the post-conflict situation. We already have a comprehensive LLRC to address that, and there are other committees that have been subsequently appointed. I don't see a great dichotomy between what I say and what other people say, but I do feel that I do agree with the comment regarding the fact that there's no need to internationalize the process.
One more final question, Rajpal.
Yeah, Mr. High Commissioner, now you insist that the issue raised about taking Channel 4 to court is more or less irrelevant, but I think at least as a matter of detail, you said you're not an attorney at law, but I happen to be one. And as far as I'm concerned, the laws of libel came from Great Britain, and from what I know of the laws of libel in Britain, if you can't take a documentary maker for clear libel to court, there's something different between the law I know and the law that your advisors know. So it seems curious to me that they say that they cannot take this documentary to court on libel, and then also you sought to say that we should not place too much importance on what it entails, the documentary itself. But the Prime Minister of the country you are accredited to, the Prime Minister himself, said before he came here that the footage he saw was very disturbing, the last documentary. So we all know that Channel 4, all three documentaries, I wouldn't dignify it by calling it journalism, I just call it rubbish. But though we know that, he insists on saying that this footage is disturbing, and he bases all his interventions, or most of them, on that footage. So to me, can I ask you, one is that, and the second thing is, you talk about the diaspora, and you sought to say, I think to some extent, that we need to talk about the positives. But we may talk about the positives until the cows come home. We have done so. We have done so over the years since 2009, after the end of the war. But they insist, your country's Prime Minister, the country that you are accredited to, the Prime Minister insists on dwelling on the negatives. And the role he played here in Colombo, Sri Lanka, it's absolutely odious. He had the audacity to come here and give an ultimatum to the President of this country, saying that by March, if you don't have a committee to investigate war crimes, so-called, here, that he's going to take us to the UNHCR. And he came here, he went to Jaffna, he did all the petty politicking that he could so that he can get those votes that you were talking about. And you yet say that the diaspora, well, their activities are marginal to the central discourse and so on. But the impact that David Cameron and all of these people are making is enormous. And they will not stop, if I may say so, until they take the President of this country and the Defense Secretary to a War Crimes Tribunal. And that is a serious situation. And I ask you, what are we going to do about it? What are you going to do as High Commissioner about it?
Well, to respond, as I said, the government of Sri Lanka, we can argue till the cows come home about the legality of taking Channel 4 to court. That is not a decision made by the High Commission of London. that is a decision made by the government of Sri Lanka. Number one. That is a decision made by your government as well as my government. Right? It is not a decision made by the High Commission of Sri Lanka. Number one. Okay, that is made by your legal experts who are also my legal experts. So we're both in this. Number one. So we don't need to revisit that. That will continue to be looked at. You may have a different view, but that is for you to discuss with the legal experts of this country. Number one. Secondly, the discussion regarding the diaspora, I never said that the impact of what the diaspora do are marginal to the central discourse. I did not say that. What I said was that the diaspora, the vitriolic diatribe that we sometimes get from what you call the diaspora, only emanates from a very small percentage of the diaspora. That is important. The rest of the diaspora are not very aggressive in this same manner, nor do they have such vitriolic diatribe that this small percentage do, and those are the ones that funded it. I think that is very difficult to change, because that depended very much on that simple thing, money, and it still continues to depend on that. And we need to understand that the money that we spent on the conflict, on fighting, on the arms and fighting the conflict, we are now spending in Sri Lanka on development, on reconciliation, rehabilitation, reconstruction. What happened to the money that they were spending? Are they spending it on reconciliation, rehabilitation? No, because they don't need to. That is what you need to understand, that the money, even though it has dropped down substantially from what they used to raise, there's a substantial amount of funding, international terrorist financing, still going on. And it is this that is being thrown at opinion leaders. And we need to understand that. When they throw a substantial amount of funding to lobby groups, to legislators, to parliamentarians, to different people, that is where you have an issue. And we need to understand that it is not a matter of discussion and discourse. It is a matter of the fact that several $100 million was raised, particularly from the large countries which had a wealthy diaspora. We all know that. And a percentage of that is being used to continue the propaganda war. Now, until we understand that, we will always be questioning, well, why is this so? And I think it's important that we understand that we recognize it. And that is where I think the responsible media can also play a part. So that's the second point. The third point regarding Prime Minister Cameron, yes, I fully agree, as I've said before, that this is not a place to internationalize, that we are in no position whatsoever to have to accede to any form of internationalization of the investigation of Sri Lanka. I fully agree with that. I've said it already. But that does not stop an individual from quoting a particular TV station or a particular booklet. It is not quoted not only by Cameron, but by many other people. It's what we get all the time. But the point is, what I'm saying is, we need to also be on the offensive in terms of what progress has been made. We within Sri Lanka need also to be more focused, because we can certainly add to that narrative. We can add to the positive narrative. We don't need to always be defensive about a negative narrative. I think we can be far more proactive about a positive narrative of things going on in the country that is not in any way to detract from what people say. But if we always dwell and continue to dwell on that and wonder why, as if we're bemused in some manner, then I think that is not going to succeed. I think whilst we take these on, and no one is saying we should not take it on, of course we should take it on. And I agree perfectly that the point that the Prime Minister of England, if he did what is always useful for anyone, I think, for anyone, if they want to give or pass judgment on a particular country, I think it is important for them to come and achieve a balance. I think what is very important is whoever comes to the country, rather than simply visiting Colombo and visiting one area, like one particular conflicted area like the north, I think is equally important before they seek to comment on the country, to appraise themselves by also visiting the East and visiting the South and meeting the indigenous Tamil, Muslim and Sinhalese people even of Colombo, because it is only then that they will realize that people have been living together here for so many years. It is only then that they will truly realize the demography of the country. That is, to a large extent, not known. And that is something people realize when they come here. But you see, my point is this. It is not to ignore the negative, but it is important to encourage people to see for themselves, rather than simply taking it from what they see as a voice of a particular person or a voice of a high commission. They all want to see it from their constituents also. It is important that we understand that. And I think that we have a role to play in that. But I do believe the enormous effort that has been made over the last few years to put up with the lobby groups, to combat the lobby groups behind the scenes, to bring parliamentarians here, to bring the press here, to bring heads of government here. That is what we should be doing, and that is what we are doing. And that is why today we have CHOGM in Sri Lanka. And I think we should be appreciative of that and move forward with that positive spirit. Yes, you hear people still being negative, but let me tell you, those voices, little by little, will die down. Time will tell. And the mere fact that CHOGM is here today is a demonstration of that. Thank you.
All right, I think we're going to have to head over to the other side for the other press conference. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you as well, High Commissioner. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.